Everybody ready to cringe? Wrote in the back of it. Okay, and then something dark. Oh God. I know it's gonna be Daisy and Chains. I know it is, I know it is, I know it is. His name is Harrison Cole. Excellent name. If you guys have been here for a minute, you're like, we know Audrey. He kind of dabbles in boats. Oh, you guys, I have such struggles. I have such struggles. You know the thing. It was like one of her, however you find your flowers, go for it. Hi everybody, it's Audrey and welcome back to Chapter and Converse, and welcome to part 2 of Booktrovert Bingo, Spring Ahead, book recommendations for Florals for Spring, Groundbreaking, which is a prompt which is designed to have you choose a book that either the title of the book or the author's name is a flower or flowers on the cover. So if you are new here and missed the first video, I did flowers in the title, author's name is a flower in part 1, and I will link that for you guys. And then today we're going to talk about books that just have flowers on the cover. So all valid choices to fill out the prompt, lots of choices, lots more choices, I should say, for this part of the video, and there's also a bit of overlap, which makes some sense. So I'm just going to dive in. I'm going to kind of power round this one slightly and try not to talk about everything about what all of these books are about, so we're not here for 45 minutes. So with no further ado, without any further ado, let's jump in to some recommendations for some books and some choices that I might actually follow through on and read. So as with everything, the entire purpose of bingo, it's to have a good time and to make it work for you. So whichever way you choose to go on this prompt is totally valid. So a couple of, and I don't know which way I'm gonna go yet, which is also why I'm saying it's totally valid. So the first couple of books I wanna talk about, I did mention in part 1. The first is a nonfiction book by Tara Schuster, and it's called Buy Yourself the Effing Lilies. So flowers on the cover. It's the entire point of it. This is kind of a get it together, you are a badass vibe, kind of a self-help book. Haven't read it yet, but I did read the back of it in the first video. The second one is called Daisy and Chains. This one has it both in the name and flowers on the cover, and we have a main character whose name is Maggie Rose. So this is all the flowers on overdrive. This is a standalone Sharon Bolton book. We have a serial killer who insists that he is innocent, and then we have a defense attorney and true crime novelist who winds up getting sucked into his story, and she starts to find out that there's all sorts of lies and secrets that maybe put him in prison, and maybe he's not so guilty after all. Who knows? Heard great things about it. One of these days, one of these days. One of my favorite writers who apparently loves a flower on a cover is Lisa Jewell. So I read, if you guys have been here for a minute, you're like, we know Audrey. I was reading Lisa Jewell way back in the day when she was doing chick lit, and then I stumbled upon this book in the bookstore many, many years later. This is Then She Was Gone, and I was like, oh my gosh, she wrote a new book, and this is the best cover in the entire world. There's some really beautiful covers coming our way today. So this is, she started to sort of make a turn into a bit of mystery into her books. And this is the first of the mystery books that I read. And I really enjoyed it. It's very slow burn. We have dual timelines. We have a girl named Ellie who went missing when she was 15 years old. And we see sort of what happened in the past when she went missing, and then we see how this has affected her family, particularly her mother, all of these years later. And it's definitely very character driven. It's not thriller in a fast-paced, page-turny way, but I really connected with the story. I love Lisa Jewell's writing. I think she has just made so many incredible books and stories and choices with her writing, so a huge fan of that. And then a book of hers that I haven't read yet, Invisible Girl, has a rose on the cover. So this is obviously a contender for me, for you, for all of us put together. This is another standalone book. She basically writes all standalones with the exception of her first book, Ralph's Party. And like 10 years later, she wrote After the Party. And then most recently, she wrote The Family Upstairs, and then a sequel, The Family Remains. But she is definitely a fan of the standalone. So all that to say. So in this book, as usual with Lisa Jewell, we are following multiple characters. We have Owen, whose life is falling apart. He's been suspended from his job as a computer science teacher after an accusation of sexual misconduct. Yikes. Across the street from Owen lives the Fours family, headed by mom Kate, a psychotherapist, and dad Rowan, a child psychologist. They've always had a bad feeling about their neighbor Owen. There's something a little bit off about him. And then we have young Safri Maddox, spent 3 years as a patient of Rowan. Feeling abandoned when their therapy ends, she's searching for other ways to maintain her connection with him. It's all going to come together probably in a very dark and messed up way. So, yay for Lisa Jewell. A book that I just finished reading, or like recently-ish finished reading, is I Love It When You Lie by Kristen Bird. So by the time you guys see this, this book will be out. This is the arc of this book. She wrote The Night She Disappeared, which I read last year, and then she very kindly sent me this book because she's amazing. And I very much enjoyed this book because it's really, really good. So in this one, we are following three sisters, the Williams girls, and they wind up returning home. It was supposed to be for their Nana's birthday, but their Nana passed away, so it winds up being for her funeral over Memorial Day weekend. And Nana's death not only completely devastates the girls, but they also are reminded of all of the things they learned from their grandmother who raised them after their parents were killed in a car crash when they were really young. And one of the things that Nan taught them is how to get rid of a good-for-nothing man. And there's a lot of good-for-nothing men in this story. And by the end of the weekend, Gran is not the only one getting buried. So this is really good. It's also very slow burn. It's super atmospheric. There is some real weightiness to this. There's some real deep, I feel like, emotional dealing with grief and loss. We get the long weekend. We get 4 POVs. We find out sort of all these things from the past and how it all impacts the present. And everyone is just sort of coming to terms with things. It's really, really good. And flowers on the cover, of course. Of course, of course, of course. The next one I have is a new release, which I haven't read yet, and this is The Soulmate by Sally Hepworth. So we have all flowers along the bottom of this. Another beautiful cover, by the by. And in this one, we have a married couple who gets this new beautiful cottage situated at the edge of a cliff. The unfortunate part is that those cliffs are also a popular spot for people to end their lives. But Gabe, who is the husband, has spent quite a lot of time over the past few months literally talking people off the ledge. But when he doesn't save one of the people, his wife starts to question things because she finds out that Gabe actually knew the victim. So she's wondering if the victim jumped, was the victim pushed, and would Gabe, the love of Pippa's life, her soulmate, lie? I'm a huge fan of Sally Hepworth. She also writes great sister dramas, great character works, very much like Lisa Jewell, I feel like, in a lot of ways. There's mystery, there's some slow burn to it, there's some darkness to it. There are a lot of complicated things going on in her books. I'm a huge fan. Must read. A book that I absolutely loved, one of my favorite covers also of all times. This is the UK cover, but I feel like you guys can make it work. It's The Shadow Friend by Alex North. This is known as, I think, The Shadows in the US, and it has one of the best interior covers and pages I've ever seen in my entire life. Still one of my favorites of all time. This was the first Alex North books that I read. So it says, one of you died, one disappeared, you can't run forever. So this is another one where we get dual timelines. 25 years ago, a troubled teenager named Charlie committed a shocking and unprovoked murder and was never seen again. And then in the present day, there is a copycat killer, and this murder brings back painful memories for those involved. And there's a lot to this. This is a book that is very thrillery, that is very creepy. It is also a book that is very steeped in grief and loss, and I 1000% cried when I read this book. All the feelings in this one. I really enjoyed it. I need to read more Alex North, but in the meantime, I'm recommending the book and the cover. And then another book that I recently read, I did not stack these in an intentional way, but it's Reckless Girls by Rachel Hawkins. So this is perfect. It's a vacation book. This works for my Spring Breakers prompt. It is murdery, 10 Ways Till Sunday. It is a group of young, kind of adventurous folks who go to an island off the coast of Hawaii. So in this book, we are following Lux and Nico. They live in Hawaii. They are both kind of making ends meet. They fell madly in love in San Diego and moved to Hawaii together like 6 months ago. And these two girls who have basically been like backpacking, hanging out around Europe, just like burning time and burning money, wind up hiring the two of them to take them sailing to this remote island off the coast of Hawaii. And they want to go there because it's like tourist free. There's a lot of lure and kind of history and mystery around this island, including tales of it being haunted, of people being murdered there, of all sorts of like mystery going on there, but basically they want to get off the beaten path and they're jazzed. They are down for the ride. They are going to pay Nico a ton of money, which will give him and Lux the opportunity to then go live their best life when all is said and done. And when they get to the island, they find that another couple is there for the same reasons, but magically they all get along and everything is great and grand until it's not. So this was a great one. I very much enjoyed this book. I thought it was twisty. The atmosphere was on point. You could feel all the beautiful Hawaiian heat, which worked really well when it was cold and snowy. I mean, it snowed like 4 times in New York this year, but worked for me and really encapsulates dark and messed up. So this is my 3rd Rachel Hawkins book. I'm a huge fan of her writing. Highly recommend that one. And then I basically have a pile of books I haven't read yet. So we have Julia Haberlin's We Are All the Same in the Dark. I bought this a few years ago. Had to have it. Haven't read it. It's totally fine. So we've got Trumanelle Branson disappeared, leaving only a bloody handprint behind. Her pretty face still hangs like a watchful queen on the posters of the walls of the town's Baptist church, the police station, and in the high school. They all promise the same thing: we will find you. Meanwhile, True's brother Wyatt lives as a pariah in the desolation of the old family home, cleared of wrongdoing by the police, but guilty in the eyes of his neighbors, and according to a new documentary about the crime. So then we have a young cop in town named Odette Tucker. She wants to solve the past case, and then there's a current case. Somebody shows up dead, I think. Yep. Okay. The next book I have is This Might Hurt by Stephanie Roble. So I talked about Darling Rose Gold in the first book. This one actually has flowers on the cover in it. This is about 2 sisters. This is about a cult, I believe. Culty. So Natalie hasn't talked to her sister in more than half a year. Kit went to a place called Wisewood, and it says Wisewood's guests commit to a 6-month stay on a private island off the coast of Maine. During this time, they're prohibited from contact with the outside world. No internet, no phones, no exceptions. But the rules are there for good reason. You can't heal with all that noise. So Natalie is super suspect. She winds up, after the 6 months, going to get her sister Kit. And it said, but Wisewood won't let either of them go without a fight. So again, I've heard really good things about this book. This was gifted to me by Berkeley when the paperback came out this year, or I guess end of 2022, and I'm excited for it. So I do love a sister story. I do love something culty, and flowers on the cover make it work for this prompt. The next one that has some flowers on the cover is Malice. This is by Kiko Higashino. This is another one. I'm a little hesitant to make these videos because every time I make a TBR video, I tank myself. But this one follows, because this was on a TBR last year. A best-selling novelist is found brutally murdered in a locked room within a locked house. The two most likely suspects, his wife and his best friend, both have solid alibis, or so it seems. While investigating, police detective Kaga recognizes the writer's friend, Osamu Nonoguchi. Years ago, they were colleagues at the same school. Kaga went on to join the police force, while Nonoguchi, I can't talk today, left to become a full-time writer. As Kaga investigates, he uncovers evidence that the 2 writers were anything but friendly, and the question he must answer isn't necessarily who or how, but why. So, I've heard very good things about this book, and I'm going to go out on a limb and tell you guys, because I know I'm right, this was translated. So this would also work for found in translation, which I'm doing a full video on as well. So start making notes, you guys. This was definitely translated. So I've heard really good things about it on the list. Another nonfiction book that I have not read yet, which shame on me, this was gifted to me from St. Martin's. This is Drinking Games by Sarah Levy. So this came out a few months ago. So it says, with a dirty martini in hand, Sarah Levy saw herself as a younger Carrie Bradshaw. Like, didn't we all? Carrie Bradshaw meets Don Draper with a splash of Chelsea Handler, a New York City go-getter who was flirty, successful, and fun. But what she hid and sometimes wished she could have hid better was a young woman spiraling out of control and into her next drink. So this is her journey of sobriety, relationships, and identity. As the story reveals insight into millennial drinking culture, Sarah shows us how life's messiest moments can end up being the most profound. So again, I've heard really good things about this book. I'm very intrigued by it for sure. And I'm just very interested in it. As someone who lived in Manhattan, I feel like I always find like relatability in books that are set in places that I know, but I feel like the reality of drinking culture and of pressures and all of it, whether self-imposed or brought on by friends or brought on by society is something that's very relatable. So I'm interested in this book and I love the cover of it. Excited. The next one I have is a bit of a rom-com. Haven't read it, but I just know it's a bit of a rom-com. This is The Royals Next Door by Karina Halley. And I feel like this has, I'm mixing it up. I feel like I'm mixing it up with something else. I'm like, is this the one that's kind of like a Meghan and Harry book? So this is An Ordinary Summer Goes Royally Awry when a prince and princess, yes, move next door, bringing their handsome bodyguard with them. So Piper is an elementary school teacher by day, avid romance reader, and anonymous podcaster by night. She has a quiet, reclusive life, taking care of her mother, who lives with mental illness, avoids her regrettable ex, who bartends in town, and tries to make inroads to the tight-knit island community that still sees her, 5 years in, as an outsider. So she's happy how things are until the British royals rent the property next to hers, and their brooding bodyguard decides she is a security threat. So I don't know if we're going to get like an enemies to lovers. It seems like maybe shenanigans ensue. His name is Harrison Cole. Excellent name. He is hotter than can be, it sounds like. And beneath Harrison's no-nonsense exterior lies a soft heart, one that could tempt a woman who's sworn off attachments into believing in white knights. And then she finds herself in the middle of a royal scandal. Sure, I'm in. So contemporary romance, again, just sounds like frothy fun. Maybe a good palate cleanser for anyone looking for a palate cleanser, or maybe just a great rom-com to get lost in. So let me know if anybody's read this one. Maybe I'll read this and then I'll finally read Spare. As if. The next book I have is In the Vines by Shannon Kirk. I haven't read this one yet. I got this as a recommendation off of Abby from Crime by the Books website. Love her. And this one says, family ties so strong you can't escape. Mary Olivia Pentecost was born into one of the wealthiest families in the country and one of the most guarded. Now, 2 years after her mysterious death, Mary is seeking closure on the disquieting tragedy by returning to the New England seaside estate of her cloistered Auntie Liv, one of her closest relatives and confidants. But behind the walls of the isolated estate, the shadows of the past are darker than she imagined. The puzzles of the family history are not to be shared but unearthed, with each revelation comes a new foreboding threat. And for Mary, the grave suspicion that to discover Auntie Liv's secrets is to become a prisoner of them. How well do we know the people we love, and how well do we want to know them? The answers are as twisted as a tangle of vines in a throat-clutching novel of psychological suspense. So, I haven't read any Shannon Kirk. I did see her on the Back Room event with Hank Phillippi Ryan a couple weeks ago. She was on it with JT Ellison, and I'm mixing up all the times that I watched it, but very intrigued, really enjoyed her interview. So want to read that one. And then the last book I actually have read. This is The Husband's Secret by Leanne Moriarty. I very much enjoyed this book. So I talked about Big Little Lies in my favorite page to screen adaptations, and I mentioned The Husband's Secret as like my other favorite Leanne Moriarty book, and it's my other favorite Leanne Moriarty book. So in this one, we have A Letter is Found, and it says, "My darling Cecilia, if you're reading this, then I've died. So imagine your husband wrote you a letter to be opened upon his death. Imagine, too, that this letter contains his deepest, darkest secret, something with the potential to destroy not only the life you have built together, but the lives of others as well. And then imagine that you stumble upon that letter while your husband is still very much alive." I really enjoyed this book. This definitely gave me the same feelings of Big Little Lies in that we have multiple characters, multiple stories, things that pull them together. And I thought it was just so well written. I loved the characters. I loved the hidden mystery thread to this book. I also see, for one, I know I read this on the train because I was commuting back when this book came out. And I also see that everybody ready to cringe? Wrote in the back of it, because I used to do that sometimes. If I was reading a book and I had an idea for my own book, I would write them wherever I could. And these are notes from a book that I wrote a while ago. Not the book I'm currently working on. Anyway, funny stuff. I can barely even read it too. They always say write down your good ideas because you'll never remember them later. And I'm reading this now and I'm like, that was not a good idea. It's like lines of dialogue that I wrote. But anyway, I probably overheard people on the train talking, which is another thing I used to do. One of the only things I miss about commuting is being able to listen in on other people's conversations and get notes of dialogue. But anyway, A great Liam Moriarty book. If you haven't already read it, highly recommend this one. I just really loved it so much. And I love the concept of it. He writes a letter to read it when I die, and she finds it and he's not dead. All the secrets and lies, everything I love. So let me know what your thoughts are, your suggestions are, flowers on the cover, what you're reading, if you would recommend any of these. I can already hear Daisy and Chains coming in. It's not that I don't want to read it. I feel like I talked about this when I bought Spare. I feel like I psyched myself out. I like hyped myself out, and I just need to, I'm a mood reader. I just need to go there when the mood strikes. So let me know what you plan on reading for this prompt if you haven't figured out yet. And of course, let all of us know other books you would recommend for this prompt, because that is part of the fun. So thank you for hanging out today. I need to stop saying so. And I hope everyone's doing great. I hope you guys are having fun with bingo. And I will talk to you guys in another video really soon. Take care, everybody. Bye.